What's up, party people? It's Keys Dan with RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com, coming to you live and in living color from the Radio What studios. And this is my podcast, What Makes You Smarter? It's an extension of the RadioWhat.com internet radio station that I've been running for quite some time. And if you need DJ services, DJLittleRock.com. Let me say that one more time. DJLittleRock.com. Check availability and get a free price quote. And maybe you can have me on the ones and twos, the digital wheels of steel at your next event. And if you'd like to tell your story, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Use the hashtag What Makes You Famous and find it everywhere. Time for a little What Makes You Smarter. Learn with me right here on the program.
Now, on with the show. Today on the program, 10 things you need to know today for Sunday, June 14th, 2020. 10 things you need to know today. Number 1, Atlanta Police Chief resigns. Officer fired after fatal shooting. Atlanta Police Chief Erica Shields has resigned, the city's mayor, Keisha Lance Bottoms, said Saturday, while an officer, Garrett Rolfe, who fatally shot a 27-year-old black man named Rayshard Brooks, was fired. The police department announced early Sunday. Rolfe and another officer, Devin Brosnan, found Brooks sleeping in a Wendy's parking lot Friday evening. After Brooks failed a sobriety test, a struggle ensued and ended with Rolfe shooting and killing Brooks. Bottoms said she does not believe the shooting was justified. Brooks' death, which comes amid nationwide protest against police brutality, sparked more demonstrations in Atlanta, and protesters set fire to the Wendy's where the shooting took place. Since the protests began following the killing of George Floyd at the end of May, multiple Atlanta police officers have been suspended, fired, and charged for use of excessive force. This is according to the Associated Press and the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Number 2. New York emerges from coronavirus pandemic, but cases on the rise in many states. New York State has, quote, tamed the beast, end quote, Governor Andrew Cuomo, Democrat, said Saturday, referring to the coronavirus, which took a devastating toll on the state in the early months of the pandemic. New York reported 32 COVID-19 related deaths Saturday, the lowest daily figure since the pandemic hit, and hospitalizations are at their lowest point since March 20th. But coronavirus cases are still increasing in several states, and some, like Texas and North Carolina, are now seeing a record number of hospitalizations amid efforts to reopen their economies. Overall, more than 115,000 people have died from COVID-19 in the United States. Elsewhere, China has seen its largest increase in local infections, most of which are linked to a market in Beijing in months. And Brazil is now recording the highest number of daily deaths. This is according to the New York Times and CNN. Number 3, Trump addresses West Point grads. President Trump on Saturday addressed the 1,107 cadets graduating from the United States Military Academy at West Point. During the commencement ceremony, the cadets wore masks, sat several feet apart, and saluted Trump as they received their diplomas instead of shaking hands due to the coronavirus pandemic. Family and friends watched online. In the 2 weeks before Saturday's event, the cadets quarantined in groups of about 250 upon returning to campus, and all were tested for the virus. At least 15 tested positive, but West Point believed the ceremony could be conducted safely. Trump's speech veered away from overtly touching on politics at a time when tensions between the commander-in-chief and the military have heightened, and he instead focused his narrative on unity. This is according to Bloomberg and the Wall Street Journal. Number 4, North Korea's Kim Yo-jong threatens South Korea with unspecified military action. With bilateral relations between North Korea and South Korea worsening, Kim Yo-jong, North Korea's first vice department director of the ruling Workers' Party Central Committee and the sister and close confidant of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, on Saturday instructed the country's military leaders to carry out the next step of retaliation against South Korea, whatever and whenever that may be. quote, if I drop a hint of our next plan, the South Korean authorities are anxious about, the right to taking the next action against the enemy will be entrusted to the general staff of our army, end quote, she said in a statement. Quote, our army too will determine something for cooling down our people's resentment and surely carry out it, I believe, end quote. It's unclear what type of military action North Korea would take, though. The Associated Press reports weapons tests are, quote, an easy guess, end quote. This is according to the Associated Press and The Week. Number 5, police protesters clash in Paris as far-right groups descend on London demonstrations. Far-right groups claiming they wanted to protect London's monuments reportedly hurled racial slurs at anti-racism protesters, and the two sides broke out into fights as police tried to break them up on Saturday in the British capital. London's Black Lives Matter protests were reportedly smaller and more scattered than in recent days because the right-wing groups announced they would congregate in the area where a larger march had been planned. Meanwhile, French police reportedly used tear gas against protesters who tried to hold a banned march in Paris. The protest, inspired by the killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis, Minnesota, have struck a chord in France, where police have reportedly received almost 1,500 complaints against officers last year, many of them alleging violence. This is according to Reuters and the BBC. Number 6, Ukraine alleges bribe attempt to end Burisma probe was made, but Biden's were not involved. Artem Sitnik, the head of Ukraine's National Anti-Corruption Bureau, said Saturday that 3 people have been detained after offering officials $5 million in bribes to end a probe into Mykola Slozlevsky, the founder of energy company Burisma. Allegations against the company had previously made their way to the United States. Former Vice President Joe Biden's son, Hunter, once sat on the board, prompting President Trump and some of his allies to accuse the Bidens of corruption without evidence. Notably, Trump urged Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky to investigate the Bidens in a phone call, which paved the way for his impeachment. Ukraine's anti-corruption prosecutor, Nazar Kodladnitsky, said neither Joe or Hunter Biden is connected to the bribe attempt. This is according to Reuters and the Associated Press. Number 7, Maduro finance in Cape Verde. Venezuela demands release. In Cape Verde on Friday, arrested Colombian businessman Alex Saab Moran, who is wanted in the United States on money laundering charges. Jet landed in the West African nation to refuel en route to Iran when the arrest was made. He has developed a reputation as one of the top deal makers on behalf of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, making him a high-profile, long-time target in Washington's effort to weaken Maduro financially and eventually force him out of office. There's no extradition treaty between the U.S. and Cape Verde, but the latter could expel him and allow the U.S. to take custody. Venezuela has demanded Saab's release, calling it an illegal act of aggression. This is according to Al Jazeera and the Wall Street Journal. Number 8, Islamic militants kill at least 60 in 2 attacks in Nigeria. Militants connected to the Islamic State West Africa killed at least 20 soldiers and 40 civilians and injured hundreds in 2 attacks in the northeastern Nigerian state of Borno. Residents and security sources said the militants reportedly set fire to a local police station and burned down the United Nations humanitarian hub in the Monguno district, and they also attacked the Nangazi district. The Nigerian military said Sunday that the Army and Air Force had, quote, successfully repelled, end quote, the Monguno attack, killing 20 militants. The attacks occurred just days after militants killed at least 69 people in a raid on a village in another area, Gubbio. This is according to Reuters and Deutsche Welle. Number 9, gas tanker explosion kills 19 in China. A tanker transporting liquefied natural gas between Ningbo and Wenzhou, China, exploded on a highway exit ramp close to the city of Wenling on Saturday, reportedly killing at least 19 people and injuring 172. Aerial images of the scene show multiple nearby buildings collapsed as a result of the explosion. People are reportedly still missing and a large rescue mission is underway. Zhu Minglian, the deputy mayor of Wenling, said Sunday that the cause of the explosion is under investigation. Per local sources, the company which owns the truck has been penalized by authorities 11 times in the past for health and safety violations. This is according to the BBC and CNN. Number 10. MLB players ask league to set schedule after rejecting latest return-to-play proposal. The Major League Baseball Players Association on Saturday rejected the league's latest proposal to start the 2020 season amid the coronavirus pandemic, but asked MLB to set a schedule for the season, indicating the players want to get back on the field. Quote, further dialogue with the league would be futile, end quote, said MLBPA Executive Director Tony Clark. Quote, it's time to get back to work. Tell us when and where, end quote. A March agreement allows the league to impose a schedule of somewhere around 50 games, with players receiving full prorated salaries in the absence of a negotiated agreement. The players have said they want to hear what the league's plan is by the end of the day Monday. If MLB does implement a schedule, the sides would still need to work out a health and safety protocol before resuming activity. This is according to ESPN. That's 10 things you need to know today for Sunday, June 14th, 2020. Thank you so much for listening. I hope everyone out there is doing reasonably well. Drop me some comments. Let me know what you're up to. Like, subscribe, rate, review, all that kind of thing. Also, if you'd like to tell your story and hear the stories of others, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag #WhatMakesYouFamous. That's it for me. It's Keys Dan, RadioWhat.com. DJLittleRock.com. Peace. I'm out of here.
If you like what you hear, I encourage you to follow What Makes You Smarter on social media. Find it on Facebook at What Makes You Smarter, Instagram at What Makes You Smarter, Twitter at SmarterWhat, and YouTube, username Keys Dan. Leave What Makes You Smarter podcast a review and subscribe. Listen to What Makes You Smarter podcast on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, and Podcast Addict. My personal favorite, learn with me on my podcast, What Makes You Smarter. And if you'd like to tell your story, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag #WhatMakesYouFamous. Call 501-470-6386 and leave a message to set up a time for What Makes You Famous. Support What Makes You Smarter podcast using the PayPal, paypal.me/KeysDan. Email info@radiowhat.com. What Makes You Smarter is a production of Keys Dan Enterprises Incorporated at keysdan.com. Thank you for listening.